Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar today. I'm here with Helen Gallagher, who is going to be talking about teaching with virtual labs and give us lots of inspiration and best practices. My name is Maria. You've seen me in previous webinars if you've attended those. Just a quick practical information before we get started. You are able to ask questions throughout the whole webinar. You can just write them in the question box in the toolbox of the webinar, and we'll be trying to answer those along the way. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so you can also ask them there. And if you have any additional questions that you don't get answered during this webinar, or you come up with something afterwards, feel free to send them over to me at maria@absa.com, so maria@absa.com. So Helen, tell us, why are you here today with us?
Well, thanks Maria for having me along. So I'm with the customer success team in Labster, and you won't always be speaking to somebody in the team that I'm in until you're one of our customers, and we're here really just to help all the customers through their journey as they're using Labster, and we touch base with them as they're starting up with our products mid-semester and at the end of semester as well, and just to make sure that the teacher and the student's user experience is everything that it should be. And my reason for being with Labster, so I started off as a university teacher using the simulations in my teaching as well. And it really transformed how I was teaching microbiology. And I did some pedagogical research around that as well and collected a lot of data to show how effective it was in teaching my students. And at that point, I was having a lot of these conversations with Labster, saying how much I liked the product. And Labster had asked if I was happy to join the team and work with them to carry on broadcasting this message and support other teachers who were using the product as well. So that's how I came to Labster, and that's why I'm in our customer success team. And you invited me here for a webinar specifically about something today.
I did, because you talk to customers all the time, and especially this time of year where courses are rounding up and a lot of people are reflecting on the course and how it's gone. You talk to them and figure out how, what their reflections are and what their feedback is, and talk to them about how they can really get the most out of Labster and can continue to use Labster in ways that benefit them and their students. And so we wanted to talk about those, I guess, that feedback and those reflections today and share them with everyone so that you can also use them, even if you're a customer already and want, to learn more about ways to use Labster, get the most out of it, or if you're considering using Labster but haven't or aren't a customer yet, and just want to see how the whole process is, like what you don't usually see when you look at our website, or when you if you've attended previous webinars where you see more of the simulations and the upfront sort of I guess the packaging. Today we're going to dig a little bit more sort of into the behind the scenes part of it, where we're going to be seeing what happens once you become a customer and how do you get started with it all. How do you decide on the courses and the simulations, and how do you implement it in your course? How do you get to engage your students? All these different kinds of things and the questions that you might have. And you know that best because you talk to the customers every single day. So that's really why we're really happy to have you here today.
Well, it's a great time to do it because we've just gone through a round just now of trying to reach out to as many of our customers as possible to hold an end of semester review. And we do that at the end of every semester. And that's really to touch base and hear how people are using Labster. And I've worked with the company now for 18 months. So it's a good time for me to reflect on everything that I've been hearing from customers around the world, schools, colleges, universities at every level, and hear how they've been using this teaching tool. And it's a constant learning. It's a constant learning for us. It's a constant learning for the teachers and the students. But we're always hearing new stories, new ways about how Labster is getting used. People change how they use Labster as they're getting more experience themselves. And because it's a new product and a fairly new company, nobody has decades of experience in using this technology at all, whether it's Labster's product or another digital product. So we're all still reflecting and learning. And all teachers, this is a natural part of their academic process. In a year, they'll be reflecting on all their academic teachings and methods that they're using. So it's a good time for us to reflect on how we've seen Labster being used this year as well. So one of the things I've recognised is that customers who are really successful with using Labster seem to be following 4 really important steps through their customer journey. And I want to spend time today looking at all 4 of those steps, because I feel that maybe some of the webinars we've seen previously, we're really just looking at that first step, which is about curriculum alignment and planning, and how to make sure that the simulations are going to match up with the content of your course. And that's a key step, really critical, and that's really the reason why most people will come to Labster, because there's this great alignment between our big catalogue of 90 simulations and the content that you need to teach in your course. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The teacher will have to do more work than that to make sure Labster is implemented well. And we've got this whole team that's making sure the next steps are being followed as well. So I just want to give a good oversight of all of that today as well. So the four stages that I've recognised that our customers follow, first of all, is the planning step. And then the second step is a really important one, and that's preparation. And we're going to go into each of these in more detail later on, but preparation is really about making sure the platform is set up the way you need it to be set up, and that we've agreed on payment methods and that you and your students are going to know what that is. The third step, and they're all equally important, is execution, how you as a teacher are going to make sure that you follow through with all this planning and preparation, and that we're not falling at the final hurdle. And after execution, to go through this step at the end, which is review, wrapping up your semester or your year and feeding back what worked well, what didn't work well, and maybe tweaking, making changes to your next round of planning for the next semester, so that we're always all advancing and reflecting on our processes.
Yeah, and it really is quite individual how different teachers use Labster, and there is no, like I said, there is no like one way or one right way. There are so many different ways, and so we're gonna just talk about those. And
I think the exciting thing for me to be speaking to customers about this is that we've kind of got a self-selecting group of teachers and instructors. If they're using Labster or interested in using Labster, then we've selected for a very innovative and creative bunch of teachers. So every time I speak to a customer, I'm hearing something that quite excites me when they tell me how they're using Labster. So they're being very creative about it, and we're getting ideas of how this product can be used as well.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to dig into the different
steps? At planning. Yeah. So this is the one that I feel we do talk about a lot, and it's planning or knowing how and where to embed simulations in your courses. And the first thing that we always talk about is curriculum alignment. And if you're coming to Labster as a new customer, you will be supported through this by our customer team and our sales team, who will support you and give you great ideas about where to start looking at our catalogue, because our catalogue is big. It's funny because I was speaking to a customer who'd been using Labster actually for about 3 or 4 years, and when they first started, there were 20 simulations in our catalogue, and this was not long ago. And we've jumped forward 3 or 4 years, and it's over 90 simulations. So this is something that customers need to stay on top of as well, to make sure they're always aware of the new simulations that are coming out.
Yeah, and I believe there are actually, I think, around 20 or so coming out this at the end of this.
Yeah, it's a busy time.
Half year or quarter.
Yeah, it's kind of exponential growth just now. So we do talk about alignment. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because information's elsewhere. And it's also in the white paper that's already been released about how to plan.
Yes. If you want to know where to find those, you can always head on over to labster.com/whitepapers, where you have all our available white papers.
But what I did want to take the time just now to show is something called our faculty resource pages. And these are pages that are not available directly from our website, because we keep these password protected, because the faculty resource pages actually have access to all the quiz questions that are in all our simulations. So for that reason, it's not possible to get access unless you've got a password. We're very happy to make free access to this to absolutely anybody who's interested in thinking about adding Labster to your courses, because you need to see this to know if the simulations are going to match up. And it's a much quicker way to get oversight of our whole catalogue, much more user-friendly, and there are shortcuts to see the content of all those simulations as well. So Maria's brought up the faculty resource pages there for us. And to get access to the faculty resource pages, go to the website, fill in the form, or drop us an email, or contact outreach to the sales team. any of us can do this for you. It's a click of a button to do it. And access the faculty resource pages you brought here. And at the top, we've got, we've put our catalogue into categories, kind of loose groupings of topics where we see a lot of courses being set up. So you might find a course at the top there that's kind of matching the course title that you're looking at. And as we scroll down, Maria, you can see for every one of those courses, we've listed the simulations that we see being applied to courses in this area most frequently. And there will be a lot of overlap. Some courses will be used in general biology, for example, are also used in that microbiology or cellular and molecular biology. But this is a great way to come and see topics in a related area. And then as we go over the simulations, if you just hover over any one of the titles, hovering over any title will bring up the learning outcomes for that simulation. So that's a really quick way to see at a glance what's in that list of simulations. And if we click on the simulation as well, it's going to bring this up for us. And that resource panel on the right-hand side there, you can access all the quiz questions for that simulation. And as an instructor or a teacher, this is a really good way to see the pitch of our content. So you can tell at a glance from those questions if they're going to be roughly in alignment with where you want your students to be. Also in that resource panel, you can play the simulation directly. An actual play, that's just a screencast, hold on, that one would let you play the simulation step by step, the same way that a student would be asked to play it. That's going to take a teacher quite a long time, 45 or 50 minutes possibly. If you don't have time to play the whole simulation, or if you're just making your short list just now, I would really recommend that you watch the screencast, which is just a film that we have made of somebody in our team quickly playing through the simulation. So it's just a quick recording, somebody going through it as quickly as possible, and you get a much quicker oversight of the content of the simulation. Also in that resource panel, you can read the theory. So these are theory pages that are built into that specific simulation as well. So you're getting to see the whole content without going into the simulation itself. And as we scroll down, there's some information about the simulation, techniques that might be getting learned, and the learning objectives as well. And then if we go back again, Maria, you can just go back to the faculty resource pages and do the same for the next simulation. So this is where I would come if I was a teacher and thinking, okay, I'm doing a general biology course, where do I begin looking? That's where I would begin looking. I would go to that list, scroll through it, I would make a short list, look at more detail. When I think I'd picked my final simulations, I would make a playthrough of those simulations directly myself to make sure I knew exactly what my students were doing. And that would be me done my mapping. I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah.
So I want to move on from this, but I'm happy to have been able to show that faculty resource page and talk about other aspects of planning that we've got to keep consideration of as well. So aside from the curriculum alignment, these are ways that we see Labster most often being used by somebody who's a new customer to us, because these are, to us, these are the most obvious and direct ways that we'd expect the simulations to be used. And this is how we see them used most frequently by new customers, either as a pre-lab exercise, so you're teaching students about a technique or some theory before they come into a wet lab, or we see them being used as direct lab replacements if it's an online, fully online course, or if your resources have had to be cut back. And occasionally we've seen Labster used as an immediate fix where there's been a problem. Let's say there hasn't been the right planning and the lab's not been scheduled where it should be scheduled. And then this has been a great fix for some of our customers as well, saying, I need this now to be able to teach something in a lab. And also we're seeing it being used to give students an opportunity to reach the unreachable techniques, equipment and products that they wouldn't normally have access to in a lab. So that's how I see Labster. If I was thinking to recommend or advise how Labster's used, that's what I would think.
Yeah.
But as we've been moving through the years, as we've been moving through the years, we see people becoming more clever in the way that they're using Labster. And I think as you become more experienced after one semester or two, you will be reflecting and thinking, I don't have to use it this way. There are other ways that I can do it as well. So the next thing that people have been thinking about doing is saying, I primarily thought these were going to be resources for lab materials, but increasingly we're seeing the simulations being used as tutorial preparation. Really, these are all allowing some kind of flipped classroom experience. So maybe the students have to learn about a particular method or technique that's then going to be discussed in the tutorial group. And you can use the simulations then as a means to build other assignments into your course. It might be that you're going to ask for a group presentation, let's say on next generation sequencing. And a great way for that group to learn that technique would be through the simulation. Or another example is a teacher giving a simulation, and I'm going to talk about next generation sequencing again, giving this to the students and asking them to play that simulation, and then asking them to go and find a primary research paper that's citing that technique. So the students are able to recognise what's in the scientific literature based on what they've seen as an easier introduction in the simulation. And that's a really nice way to lead students into research from the simulation as well, and they recognise the methods in the two places. And they can look for differences when you're asking students, and these are more advanced students, to look for the level of detail in some methods and protocols. You can ask them to find out what's different between maybe the methodology in the simulation and maybe there's a slight difference in the methodology in the paper, or they can pull out the common factors as well. Find me the controls that were used here in the paper too. So seeing it more used for tutorials in that way, and that prep, as I said, for other written or oral or group work. Students who are in their final year in most courses, science courses, will be asked to do an independent research project. And this is the first time that students are let loose in a lab. And there's a lot of learning that's to be done for the students about a technique that they've maybe not really covered, maybe since they were freshmen or in their second year. And the simulations then are great to create a kind of bespoke list that your students might need ahead of project work. I've also seen the simulations used when teachers increasingly now are having to allow the students to build a digital portfolio of their work. And sometimes that's asking the students to make a video presentation of something in their science, or to write a blog piece, or to write some other kind of reflective article, or some wiki pages. So this is all kind of digital portfolio work that students increasingly do. And Labster I've seen built into these digital portfolios as well. So it's evidence of digital learning. And that's a great place to put the product as well. And lastly is the flipped classroom, where lecturers are recognising that there's something that the students could learn in a simulation which would allow their face-to-face time in a classroom, in a lecture hall, to be more active with the students. So you can talk about something more advanced in the class because they've self-learned this at home. And one thing that I would say is, in your planning stage, is to make sure that you allow time in your timetable for the simulations to come in, because each simulation does constitute a fairly heavy piece of work for the students. It's 45, 50 minutes normally for a playthrough of a simulation. A student might go back and do that again, and they've got these quiz questions. And if they're very engaged, they'll be reading the theory pages as well. So although we say it's 50 minutes, it really represents an hour and a half, a good length of time of learning. So make sure that you're allowing space when you're using it significantly like this, that you're leaving space in the timetable for them.
Yeah, and I think even in some of our newer simulations, you have this go back and repeat the experiment button actually that you can use so that you can repeat until you've set it up in the way you want. I think it's solution preparation actually, which is a chemistry simulation, and you can repeat again and again and again. So it can take students quite a bit of time if they choose to use that option. So
and it's the best reward for a teacher if they see that students are voluntarily going back to a resource and spending more time on it, or going back to it another day. And that's just the best thing to see, and we are seeing that. So leave time for them to do that. And then last of all, so these are our beginner users, and then there's our experienced users. And then there's like super users who are doing really creative things now. And when I'm hearing about it, it's just great to hear. The teachers become more confident with our product and can rely on the product to deliver the learning outcomes. They're past that testing phase. They know that's happening. So they can go to the faculty resource pages and they're wanting to demonstrate to the students that they're going through this learning path and letting the students be confident that they are achieving through the simulations. So some instructors are pulling out those quiz questions that are available in the faculty resource page and using all of those or some of those to pre-assess their students to check that their baseline level of knowledge is low, which is what it should be if you're giving a resource for them to learn, and then using those quiz questions at the end, maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks, looking at retainment of knowledge as well, testing the students again later in the semester to check that they've kept that level of knowledge and to show them their own progress, that they've started low and that they're finishing up with a higher level of learning. And this doesn't need to be a summative assessment. This can be quite a fun thing to do with the class. It's like a spot test. You're checking up how well they're retaining information. You don't need to use those grades summatively, but everybody is getting a chance to reflect and see how their scores have been maintained. So that can be just to show the level of learning. Sometimes that's used in more advanced classes to pre-assess whether a student needs to take a simulation, play a simulation. And more often I see that maybe at really higher level, master's level or final year classes or ahead of a project piece of work. A teachers may be suggesting that students should be playing next generation sequencing. I'm always going to use the same example. And the students might think, well, I think I know that already. Well, test them, use the quiz questions, and they can self-assess whether they want to play that simulation or not. And again, with people who are more experienced and older classes as well, you can give choice of those simulations to your students, and students love that freedom and flexibility, gives them ownership of their course as well, and that's a great thing for them to do. So these are all exciting ways that we weren't expecting to see the simulations used.
I know there are so many. It's really, it's quite cool. I just want to quickly answer some questions here that have come through, and that is if the webinar will be recorded. And yes, we will record the webinar. It is being recorded right now, and it will be sent to you automatically after the webinar is over. So we hope you stick around anyways, though, because we will be, answering questions along the way and hopefully giving you lots of useful information.
And apart from answering questions, if anybody's listening and they've used Labster in a different way and they'd like to share that with us, we'd love to hear your story as well, or email that to us afterwards and we'll get back in touch. So I just want to wrap up the next stage of planning. I'm spending a lot of time in planning because it's really important.
Yeah.
So all of this is about how to embed in your course. The next bit of planning is about how you're going to measure your success with Labster. And we do have to do this as teachers. This is reflection on our teaching practice. Has it worked? Has it delivered what we wanted it to deliver? And how can you measure success? Well, you can use those quiz scores that are in the simulations to show this learning curve. But that's just one metric. You can also look at the level of engagement of your class, which you can see in the teacher dashboard. And we're going to have a look at the teacher dashboard later to see what that looks like. So that's data that you can get from your teacher dashboard. And also apart from that, lots of people will formulate questionnaires to get feedback from their students, especially if it's a new resource, to find out their thoughts on it. And I see teachers as well creating focus groups with students. And sometimes that's at the end of semester when the teacher has said, these were the simulations we used. Are there others that you'd be interested in using? And the students are saying, actually, that would have been good and that would have been good as well. So again, that's about having students as co-creators of their own course, which is really important to them.
Yeah.
And you can look at student achievement elsewhere in the course. So you might be able, you'll never be able to say the cause and effect, but you might recognise that students are performing better in their wet labs. Let's say if they're coming to do a wet lab, you might recognise they're getting through this more quickly, or they're understanding it better, or they're working harder, answering the questions more easily. They might be more prepared for their project work, Or you might see them performing better in end of semester quizzes. You feel that some of the concepts that used to be an issue to teach seem to be going down a bit better if you're using the simulations. And the other important thing to do as well, if you're working in a group with colleagues, is to speak to each other and find out if there's anybody else in your university or college who's using Labster. There might be others that you don't know about. You can ask us to be put in contact with them, and to reflect with them, find out how it's been going with other teachers. The other thing to think about then at this stage is not just how will you measure success. At the beginning of the year, you can think about where you might need to report that at the end of the year. That might be to a staff meeting, to your peers and colleagues, or you might know already that you want to be taking this to a conference and presenting your data. That involves another level of planning. You might need to have ethical approval if you're going to be using student data for papers or presentations that way. So just think that through. If you are thinking of taking it to that level of pedagogical presentation of your results, then I would recommend that you check our research papers, which are on our website as well, because that's been done before. Get ideas there and see how that's been laid out previously. Mm-hmm. So a lot of work there.
Yeah, I just got a really interesting question actually that we can probably answer, which is, will Labster enable students or teachers to jump to specific parts of a simulation? Because sometimes teachers just want a section of the simulation to complement their instruction. It can have a lot more teachers, or I can have a lot more teachers on board if you enable this self-chunking ability. So it's not something we currently offer.
It's not something we currently offer because the simulations just now are following a path that we need to know that the student has accomplished the first steps in the missions before they move on. So every simulation is broken down into mission steps, and the student has to complete each mission before they move on to the next. They can move back as they've moved through missions, they can go back, but you can't skip forward. So just now you can't select just to play a certain component. What you can do as a teacher is be flexible with how you use those grades. So when we're looking at the teacher dashboard, you might recognise that the students aren't going to be able to answer all of those questions. So you can adjust the pass mark. That gives you some flexibility there, but not in playing just sections of the simulation just now. But it's entirely up to you. And if you only need to play the first half of the simulation, you can say to your students, I'm only looking at the first 5 questions or the second 5 questions. That's up to you to say what you're looking at.
Yeah, and if it's perhaps just an animation that you want to use as some part of your teaching that's in the simulation, we can have screencasts that you can always get hold of if you want. You can access them on the faculty resource page as well. So there are lots of different more flexible options for getting close to that, but not quite that specific function. We don't have that, at least not yet. But great question. So yeah, let's
move on. I think we've done a lot of planning. I think we're going to look at preparation next. So these are the practical steps. So the planning is a lot of hard thinking for the teacher, and I know it involves a lot of logistics as well. And we never take it for granted how much effort it takes to set this up in a course and how much organisation that takes to put something new in. It's a lot of work. And the preparation is where we can help you. We can't help you with your course structure, but we can help with the preparation. And this is about making sure the simulations are going to function the way you need it, and it's about allowing access and making sure that's set up properly. So this is where your customer team will be working really closely with you and asking you to think about whether you want to be accessing the simulations through a desktop screen, which is primarily the way we see the simulations being used, or maybe you're thinking already about using VR headsets. So that's a decision to make.
Yeah.
After that, you need to decide if you want Labster built into your LMS, your learning management system, or your virtual learning environment if you're in UK or Europe. And Labster is set up to do that with Moodle, Canvas, Blackboard, Saki,
lots of
other ones I can't remember, but all the big ones, we do that routinely. And that means it gives easier access for your students. Eventually, when it's all set up, the simulation titles will be on your course page, let's say in Blackboard, and the students literally just have to click and play. There's no separate login. Teacher doesn't need to register them. You don't need to make lists of students who are going to be playing in the simulations. It's click and play.
Yeah.
And the other advantage of that as well is that we can get the grades from our teacher dashboard sent into the grade book of your LMS as well. So that's just making it a bit easier for you to see those grades instantly. Now this is great and it's easy for us to do, but it just takes another couple of weeks probably of communication between us and your IT or e-learning expert as well. So we'll need to find out from you who that person is, and we'll need to make sure that we've got good communication with them to get that done. And one thing to be aware of, that we can have questions there about data sharing and confidentiality, which we're completely equipped to answer, but that might be something from your side that takes another week or two if you've got that being investigated. But that's something that we routinely answer, and we've never hit a wall that we've not been able to get through about those questions, but it can just slow things down. And if you're not using an LMS, you can access Labster through the edX platform. And that is, maybe if it's the first time you're using Labster, that might be an easier way to have the courses set up. And the students in that case just need to register with Labster first of all, and then we'll build your course and the students access it through there. So they're the platforms.
Yeah.
The second thing to think about is how the simulations are going to be paid for, whether that's going to be an institution level of payment, where the institution pays upfront at the start of the course, or if you're looking for a student pay model. And the students can either pay by purchasing vouchers through the bookstore that we will send to the bookstore, or they can pay directly from the simulations by credit card. And we'll have that, or you can do both actually, and we can set that up the way it needs to be.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of preparation that we can help, kind of logistics with that too.
Yeah. Yep. So you're in good hands if you
Good hands,
if you come on board.
but these are the practical steps that need to be considered as after you've done your initial planning.
Yeah. And I see there are a few more questions coming in that I think we'll wait till the end to answer, just because they're not as related to what we're talking about right now.
Okay.
But let's move on to the next.
Yeah, the last point there was just when you set up that you can hold a kickoff call with somebody from the customer success team who will make sure that we're all on the same page and that you've got all the information you need and that you're confident everything's set up, ready to communicate to your students. So next is the communication to students. So execution. And this is a hurdle where the ball can be dropped. I'm mixing up my metaphors, sporting metaphors really badly. You're dropping a ball in a hurdle. But this is where the teacher's done all the prep. We've got everything set up, and then semester starts and everybody's swamped. And it can be very hard to make sure you're staying on top of this, a new resource, and it's a new class and they're new students and maybe everything's new. And this is just advice to make sure that you're staying on top of it. And the first thing I would say is to make sure that you're communicating with your class. What is Labster? Tell them about the simulations, show them a screencast.
We have videos as well on our YouTube channel that are great actually for just showing like a 2-minute introduction to Labster.
That's great to show if you're in a lecture theatre and saying next week we're going to be starting with these simulations, and you can show them what it looks like. Show them what Labster is. Explain why they will be using it. Why is this teaching resource going to be used? What do you expect it to do for the students? Let them know the learning outcomes, what they're going to get from those simulations, and be clear with them about when they will be using it as well. And maybe you've set deadlines for completion in your LMS, or you're going to say these have to be completed as pre-lab or before a particular assessment. Be clear about those timelines with them as well.
I think I just want to add in here, because this is actually something we talked about in our webinar last week, that because we had a teacher who just used the simulations as a complementary part of her course, and so she actually got 80% of her students to use it. It wasn't something they had to do or had to complete, and it was just there if they wanted to. But because she communicated about it so well and talked about what it could do for them, they were excited about it and started using it by themselves. So that's something that I think is just to say how great an outcome you can actually have from communicating really well about it.
Yeah, and if given full transparency of how we see this used by students at different levels, we do see really enthusiastic uptake with first year students who haven't got cynical or too tired of their course, or they haven't got that really smart way of thinking, do I need to do this to pass the exam? They come into their first year and think, I'm going to do everything and make sure I do it the best I can. And then as students become more mature, they become slightly more selective, as all teachers will know about what they do. And that's where teachers are putting the spin on things and saying to their older students, well, you choose what you do then. I'm going to let you have freedom of choice. I'm going to let you self-assess. And that's keeping those more mature students involved in that as well. So apart from communicating with your class, then make sure you tell your students where and how to access the simulations. It might be that they go through your LMS, show them it in the LMS, or it might be that you're just sharing the link with how to get into the edX course. And importantly as well, put in your course page how the students can access Labster help and support. We've got a really comprehensive list of help pages that students can go to, whether they're experiencing technical difficulties with their computer, whether they've forgotten how to pay for the simulations, whether they want to check their own student dashboard, loads of support there. And if they have persistent problems, the students have to fill in a support form to reach us directly, because we don't want the students going back to the teacher saying, I'm having a technical issue, or my computer's crashed, or the simulation seems to be frozen. It's really important they let us know about that, and we'll reply to the students directly, so the teacher's not getting all that traffic.
That's a great function.
And then as teacher, how do you know your class are engaged? Make sure that you're going to your teacher dashboard so that you can monitor whether the class has started using the simulations, and make sure that you are able to use the help and support pages as well, and reach out to us. If you're 2 weeks, 3 weeks into semester and it's not looking like there's engagement, or you think, I'm not sure if they're playing the simulations or not, let us know, and maybe something we need a bit of troubleshooting or something small to set you back on the path. But do reach out to us at any time to get support. I think, were we going to look at the teacher dashboard?
Yes, let's do that. Just quickly.
So the teacher dashboard is a teacher's tool, and the students have a student dashboard. And the student dashboard, let's say you have given your students 5 simulations to play for the course. A student, when they go into any simulation, they will be able to access their own student dashboard, and they'll see their history and their scores for what they have played. The teacher dashboard lets the teacher see an overview of the whole class and how the class has been performing. And what we've got just now, what we're sharing is a course page that has been set up on edX. So this is not how it would look if you were accessing through your LMS. If you were accessing through your LMS, all you need to do is start a simulation, and there'll be a tab or a button on the side that says Teacher Dashboard, and you click on that and it'll take you to your class teacher dashboard. But we don't have an LMS set up here, so that's why we're going through edX.
Yeah.
So,
and I just quickly want to say that I'm not 100% sure the screen is coming through right now. If it's not, we apologize. We're just going to carry on just in case that you can see it. Just
okay.
If not, we'll send a screenshot after, or a screencast after.
I'm hoping you can see it. And there's a course page here with some tabs at the top. And I'm just going to ask Maria to click on the one that says simulations. And this will take a wee minute to come up. And down at the bottom there, Maria has already selected a button there saying dashboard. And she's going to click on the dashboard. And this is what you will see when you come into your teacher dashboard. Actually, before this, is there a course setup button, Maria? So settings there. When you come into your teacher dashboard for the first time, you'll be led through these settings steps for your teacher dashboard. And you can come and rechange these settings at any time. So in the beginning, you're first of all asked to select your simulations that you want to populate your teacher dashboard. And in this case, we've just picked the 4 that we were using in this course. Maybe you've picked 10 simulations for your course, but you only want data from 5 of them. You can select which 5 it's going to be here. So we've got the first 4 selected and we're going to continue.
I just clicked a few more now.
Oh, did you?
Should I unselect
No,
those?
carry on, let's see what
Okay.
happens. Continue. And then you define your completion threshold. Now, this was the point I was making about teachers saying, is there any way that we can select segments of the simulations to play? Not really just now, but you can say, I don't need you to go do the whole simulation. I'm happy if you've got 50 or 75% completed. So let's change that to 75%, Maria, and continue. And then you can define your Labster score threshold, whether you're feeling really tough on your students or you're feeling really generous. You can set that pass mark. We're going to put it to 80. 85.
85.
You're a hard teacher. And as I said, you can come back and change these if you've set a threshold and it looks like students aren't passing. And this is just so that you can quickly at a glance see students whether they're passing or not quite meeting these thresholds. So then continue again. And you can define whether you want to take the score of the student's first attempt or their best attempt. And at this point, I do want to point out that if we're sending grades into your LMS gradebook, then it is the first attempt that's sent by default. And we're really busily working to try and fix that to make sure that it's the best attempt that can be selected for as well. And that's not something that's a limitation on our side. It's because we need to go into the back side of Canvas, Blackboard, Moodle to be able to do that. But it's something that we're really looking into. But on your teacher dashboard, you can pick best attempt or first attempt and then continue. And then we can just save the settings and just telling us there that we can come back and done. And this is what a teacher dashboard looks like then. On the left-hand side, we've got Labster test 2, 3, 4, 5. These would be your student identifiers, so the email address of your students who've logged in. And you can see their average score, the number of simulations they've completed, so they've only completed 1 out of 7. And at a glance, we can see that the simulation that they've played is acids and bases. None of the others are populated. And they're all lit up in green, which means they've passed our threshold marks that we set, which was
85%.
85% points-wise. And did we say how much completion? I can't remember. 70% completion, whatever it was. But the students have passed those thresholds that we set. And if they hadn't, that text would be coming up in green. Their scores would be coming up in green.
And if you're in doubt about the settings you set, you can always just
go back
them again over
and
here.
check that. So that's a really quick way at a glance to look at engagement. And at the end of semester, you can export that data as well in XLX and put it into any other spreadsheet. So it's great.
It is. Is that?
That is us done. Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on the clock and thinking what else we've got to get through.
Yes.
Did we finish with execution?
I
think we did.
let's just go back and check for a second.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're done. Yeah. Teacher dashboard. And then at the end of semester, then is really important, this review period. Going to your teacher dashboard, getting that data out, putting it into a spreadsheet, looking at the quiz scores, and looking at students' performance across other elements of the course as well. Maybe, as we mentioned earlier on, differences in the lab behaviours, they're more confident, or you feel that they actually stretched more, they're getting through the lab more quickly, or looking at exam grades elsewhere. Another thing you can do, and this keeps students really motivated, is to take some of our quiz questions and pop them into the end of semester test or exam. And that keeps the students going to them, make sure that they know that these learning outcomes are going to be tested in the final exam as well. And you can use the same quiz questions or modulate them quite easily to have something similar.
Yeah.
Other outcomes you could be looking at to reflect on is, has it allowed more flexibility for your students? Maybe that's an important thing to you, to allow them to work from home if they needed to. Student levels of motivation, are they enjoying their course more? Do they seem happy when they're in simulations? Is it reducing stress in other elements of the course? So these are all important things for a teacher to reflect on. And as well then be thinking about your teacher outcomes too. Has it in any way reduced your workload, which obviously we want it to be doing, making life simpler for you. Maybe you've been able to remove a mid-semester quiz because you've used the grades from Labster, or maybe you've not had to do so much tutorial prep because you've used a simulation. So is it improving your outcomes as well? And in this review time, this is when I would suggest to staff that they go back to the faculty resource pages again to check out new simulations, because teaching staff won't be looking at those faculty resource pages, won't really be reviewing our catalogue mid-semester. You're getting through that course. But do go back. If you've not watched the webinars throughout the year, just go to the faculty resource pages and see what's new there. Make notes of any changes you might want to make to your course, because you can switch in and out those simulations and come back to us and let us know, and we can make those changes for you. And at this point as well, change how Labster is embedded in your course if you need to. Maybe you're thinking some are better before a lab or after a lab, or maybe you're thinking I'm going to make a written assignment based on some of this content. So that's where you can make changes as well. And last of all, have a review call with one of us. It's 10-15 minutes so that we can ask them questions that are most pertinent to us. Is how well has it worked for you? Identify any blockers, think about ways that we could keep it working really effectively for you, and make sure we've got everything in process for your next semester. You might need to renew licenses, or you might just need courses set up, and make sure that we're all well ahead of the curve in getting everything set up. Especially, I would say, for September course starts. I know we're reaching a real bottleneck where everybody's renewing new courses across the world, and we'll be handling all of that. So if there's a potential for you to get ahead of the game and speak to us about that now, then please do.
All right.
Yeah.
That was a lot of information. Yeah.
I think I've spoken at breakneck speed because I wanted to get this all across in one place.
Yeah.
But they are those 4 bullet main points.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the path to success. If people are following all these steps, and they're going to have a great experience. And these are customers who are renewing and coming back to us and getting more value the more that they use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to say also that we are producing a white paper with all of this information in it, written pretty much by you, Helen. So in your own words, most of it. So yeah, we'll be sending those out as well within the next couple of weeks to everyone who signed up for this webinar, so you can have it all in a little bit more detail than what we have in the slides, in case you want to look at that and have even more information as well from that. Yeah. So maybe that is a useful resource to have. I think, I think that pretty much brings us to the questions and suggestions we decided to call it, because of course we want to answer the questions as well, but as we said before, we really do want to hear from you out there. If you're a customer already and you are using Labster in even more creative ways than we've talked about today, we'd love to hear about them and to bring them up and share them with everybody.
And you're great at sharing that story through your testimonials. If we hear about great experience, then
absolutely, yeah. So I write the testimonials that you can find on our blog. It's blog.labster.com, and we invite these customers who use Labster in creative ways to tell their stories and share them with our readers. So if you want to be a part of that as well, you're more than welcome to write me, again, at maria@labster.com. And I'd love to share that story with all our readers.
And they're great things to do for personal career development as well, because it's great promotion. You're on our website. There are people reading your story and your best practice. So you're disseminating your best practice by being part of these blogs. And we've seen teachers who have been promoting their experience this way win teaching awards by being so open and by being so engaged with the global community and doing this. So it's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
And I would say pretty much work free for the teacher. We're not asking you to write the article. Maria will give you the questions, hold a short interview, and then you do the writing.
Yeah. All it requires is that you'll chat with me. And they're also great inspiration if you are looking for more specific ideas for how to use Labster. We try at least to write those in the testimonials in a way that you can find or that you can use as well. So have a look through them and see if there's anything that you can get inspired from. So I think we're going to head on to the questions, and I could just see from browsing through before that we do have a couple of questions about pricing. And as always, I'm going to be a little bit hesitant to answer that because pricing really depends on the courses and the number of students and a lot of different factors. So the best way and the simplest way, really, and the fastest way for you to find out is just to head on over to labster.com/pricing. And to fill in the form, there's a form on that page to give us some information, and then you'll be contacted either by email or phone for more details. So that is the best way to find out. I also don't know actually anything about pricing, so I can't answer that question. But yeah, so that's the best way I think to go about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And let's see what else we have here. Yes, which specific benefits, educational value have you seen from the VR platform over the web-based platform? That's a great question.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Yeah. So we have had some of our customers do studies into this just now who have compared the VR platform to the web-based ones to see what the changes are in the students. I believe some of this is going to be published, and I believe, I don't want to name names of people who are doing this work, but I know who it was, and I'm going to be quite excited to see the results. We will let you know when that's published. And I think across the board, looking at smaller levels of studies as well, we're seeing that it might not be a massive change in the learning attainment of the students, but we're seeing increases in levels of motivation and self-efficacy as well. So it might not be the learning goals that we're seeing a huge leap in. And that's completely conversational. I don't have the data to back that up, but that's my impression of the take home from that as well just now.
Yeah, and we did a white paper a while back that you can also find on our white papers page that reviews the research that was available at that time. It hasn't been updated for the past few months, but it is relatively new, so you can always see that as well and review the different studies that are actually listed in there. I think one of the findings was also retainment levels of information were increased. And again, very small studies because not a lot of people are using virtual labs or virtual reality to use or to study science yet. So it is relatively small and relatively, different findings, but a lot of interesting.
And the other place where I see VR being applied really successfully just now is on very technical and vocational based courses. So maybe it's a technical or vocational college, and they seem to be very engaged in using VR because it's a very experiential and it's a kind of skills-based learning. So for those groups of students, they seem to be getting a lot from using VR as well.
Yeah. So there's still a lot to be done and research-wise on that. But on virtual labs, we do actually have a lot of research. We have a research page, labster.com/research, where you can find, I don't think all the research papers are on there, but some of them at least are. And you can always write us at, I believe it's research@labster.com to get more information if there's something specific you're looking for.
And I know that Labster's already been responsive to that research because very early studies showed that if we were taking that 45, 50-minute simulation and putting it into VR, we actually saw a drop-off in learning outcomes that the students were getting because it was too much. It was information overload, they were overstimulated, and they stopped taking that knowledge in. So we learned early on that the simulations had to be shorter for VR. And I know we're in the stage of converting our whole catalogue, going back through and making that VR friendly so they can all be played in VR in smaller plays that are more effective for the students.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're very eager to learn and to adapt. Let's see. And then we have a question. Once subscribed to Labster, is access granted to all labs or only certain sections?
That's up to you, and that will be reflected in the pricing that you're offered as well. Most courses, I would say, are using between 1 and 10 simulations, and that's the model that we see most used because whether you're, if a course is running for 1 semester, 10 simulations, most teachers would think is sufficient to put into that course, and they might not use all 10. So that's what we see, and we do really encourage teachers to be selective about which simulations they're using so that we're not saying, here's the whole catalogue, let the students go free, because the students will be unguided and not know what to play. So it's much better if the teacher has said, these are the ones that we select. Having said that, if you've got a really long course, or if you think you want the simulations to follow a cohort of students from first year through to third year, you want access to the whole catalogue, that is something that can be set up. And again, reach out to our sales team and customer team who would discuss that with you and get the plan.
Yeah.
So basically, if you want it, we can make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and an extension of that question is if it's more for college level or to use with high school students. And we have both in our catalogue. They're categorized in our simulation catalogue by high school and college, college level or university level. So you can just see. And I mean, again, I think there's a certain flexibility. I think some people use, or they overlap a little bit, more about that than I. But,
there are some topics that we will be seeing taught at the top level of high school that are maybe being taught in the lower levels of colleges and universities as well. But high school is where we're going to be seeing great expansion after recent news that all high schools in Denmark, where we are just now, are going to be accessing the simulations. So we will have simulations specifically targeted at the high school level. And when I've spoken to high school teachers, a question I sometimes ask them is about our level of content. And the teachers have said, actually, they've been excited to give something to the students that does stretch them. And maybe they've not been able to answer all the questions, but they've been able to have this experience of being in a research lab. And they say the value that that gives and motivation to these students is beyond anything else. They're really fired up about it. And they love that it's got this kind of gaming digital aspect as well.
Yeah.
So engagement is really important for those students.
And we have so many questions here. I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer them all. But there's one here that I think is about if there's a flexibility within if you can build different classes. And there is a lot of flexibility, like you said before. You can pretty much combine the different simulations as you want.
So a teacher there is saying, can we build different classes? Example, if I teach biology, chemistry, anatomy and physiology, I would want them to be assigned different labs. Absolutely, 100%, that is the way we operate, so that there's not this big messy group of students all accessing different things. We would build a course for your anatomy students, a course for your chemistry ones, a course for your biology ones. They would all have a different access path, and the teacher then would see the performance of each class separately. And it might be that you're one of these students, Maria, and you're enrolled in all those courses, then that's fine. You're in 3 courses, but they've all got slightly different domains so that the teacher knows what's happening in each course separately.
And I can see that we're on the very last minute here. So I think we're going to have to wrap up. Okay. And I think we'll try to get back to you the remaining questions by email if you put in your email, which you have if you signed up. So we'll do that. And I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I'm done fast talking. That was fun. I'll come back and do it again.
Yeah, we'd love that. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, we're happy to hear any feedback and any questions, additional questions. Send them over to me at maria@labs.com. And we hope we see you for our next webinars. Bye-bye.
Bye.